What's up, y'all? We are checking out Rick Ross's memoir, Hurricanes. That's the name of Rick Ross' new book. It's been out for a while now, but it's actually pretty good, man. Y'all should check it out. It's on Audible. Let's go and get into chapter 12, and I'm going to come back with my reaction. Hit that thumbs up button.
Chapter 12. I have the gift of foresight. I can see the different ways that a situation might play out. Every possible outcome. But not every time. There are some storms you never see coming. There would be no sophomore slump. Triller was another number one, selling just shy of 200,000 copies in its first week. The Boss, my single with T-Pain, landed in the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100, becoming my second certified platinum record after Hustling. Things were going pretty good. The label was happy, the fans were happy, the money was piling up. I was dating Foxy Brown, and that relationship was exciting. I'd had a thing for Foxy since I first heard her on a song called Touch Me, Tease Me back in '96. I met her on the set of DJ Khaled's video for Out Here Grinding that summer, and we hit it off. Aside from a minor legal issue, I didn't have much to complain about. At the top of 2008, I'd gotten arrested in North Miami after a traffic stop. I'd been charged with carrying a concealed weapon and possession of marijuana. The arrest was nothing to be too worried about. The weed charge had already gotten dropped, and soon the gun one would be too. I had a license to carry, but due to an error, my permit had registered as suspended. The case was going to get dismissed. The only part that was concerning was when my lawyer found out my case had been assigned to the police department's gang task force. During a deposition of the arresting officer, he was told it was because of my alleged ties to a gang called the Carroll City Cartel. Why was this case assigned to the gang task force? Because your client claims affiliation with the Carroll City Cartel and other known gang members. Where did you get that from? Other detectives. Is that pulled out of the vast universe, or do you have something definitive? I think there's some literature or video on YouTube that you can pull up for yourself. I had to move with a little more caution. I'd worn a Booby Boys t-shirt in the Hustling video. Then I put out a documentary called M.I.A.Yo., counting down the top 10 dope boys in Miami history. I was essentially taunting law enforcement. I was still too connected to the streets to be acting so reckless. So I was being mindful of my moves around this time. I was aware that something from my past could get dug up and used against me. It just never occurred to me that it could be the thing it ended up being. Halfway through the summer, I got a call from one of my homies telling me there was something I needed to see. A website had published a photograph of me at a graduation ceremony for the Florida Department of Corrections. I was dressed in a correctional officer uniform and shaking hands with a middle-aged white lady by the name of Marta Villacorta. Marta was the warden for the South Florida Reception Center, a state prison in Doral. The article said the picture confirmed rumors that I had once worked as a correctional officer. The subtext was this made me a fraud, that all my talk about moving kilos in my raps were lies if this were true. Immediately, the story started to spread like wildfire. Report: Rick Ross worked as a Florida corrections officer. Rolling Stone. Rick Ross, correction officer rumored confirmed. XXL. Rick Ross's coke rap career imperiled by charges of law enforcement. Vulture. I'm talking about this here, as opposed to earlier in the book when it took place, because this is when my time as a correctional officer became an important part of my story. Prior to this moment, I thought of it no differently than when I used to wash cars, or when my mama got me a job for the Department of Health delivering medicine to people who were too sick to leave their house. When I dropped out of Albany State and moved home, I needed to get a job. I was getting money, so it wasn't that I needed the income so much as that I needed something to tell my mama I was doing with my life. If I wasn't in college, then I had to get a job. Those were the rules if I wanted to live in her house. The job I really wanted was to work at the docks. I wanted to be a longshoreman. I used to bug Gino, my tattoo artist and a good friend, to connect me with his younger brother Kano. Kano was part of a crew of Haitians called the ROC, which stood for Rich Off Cocaine. They were known for pulling huge heists at the port of Miami. They'd get tipped off about incoming cargo ships that were smuggling in some kilos, and from there, it could go one of two ways. Either Kano and his crew would hijack the freighters at sea, where they'd strip everybody naked, toss their phones into the ocean and get somebody to give up the goods, or they would wait until the loads came off the docks. Then, disguised as undercover police officers, Kano and his crew would pull the smugglers over and rob them. They'd be in unmarked Crown Victorias, outfitted with strobe lights and everything. This was high-level piracy. I wanted to be the inside man at the docks, but you needed a plug at the union to get that job. I would drop hints to Gino to get him to introduce me to Kano. In addition to tattoos, Gino did custom airbrushing, and one afternoon, I brought in a pair of Timberlands and $200 and told him I wanted him to write "Rich off cocaine" on them. The boots came out incredible, but Gino didn't take the bribe as far as connecting me with Kano. He didn't want to see either of us get into any more trouble than we were already getting into. That's when I applied for a job at the Florida Department of Corrections. I already knew several niggas who worked as correctional officers. It was a common job for big, mean former football players. It was also an easy job to get because Florida has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. Being a CO is not a job that someone with lifelong aspirations to work in law enforcement takes. My first 6 months were spent in the Department of Corrections Basic Recruit Training Program. The 540-hour course consisted of me taking multiple choice tests, completing obstacle courses, and learning first aid and CPR. The main campus of the South Florida Reception Center is a violent place, but they don't throw you to the wolves right away. As a level 1 correctional officer, I was assigned to a watchtower post in the prison South Unit. The South Unit housed 600 inmates, most of whom were either elderly or ill. After a few months in the tower, I was promoted, which meant I got to escort these guys to the medical ward and stand by while they recovered from various surgeries and procedures. As you can imagine, these inmates didn't tend to cause many problems. The play was to get transferred over to the main unit. Once I got over there, this correctional officer shit was gonna be a lick. The pay was still shit. My starting salary was less than $25,000. But this was where you could make money off the books by bringing in weed or letting niggas finger their girls during visitation. The main unit is where I would encounter niggas I knew, or niggas that Mike and Booby knew. Both of them had a lot of connections and influence in the correctional system. Really, they had connections everywhere. The fire department, the phone company, the police. For a while, I made an effort to perform the job to the best of my ability. I showed up on time. I logged my hours. I wrote up the reports. But that didn't last too long. The thing people don't understand about prison, whether you're in there as an inmate or a CO, is how uneventful it is most of the time. I'd never been so bored in my life. I started smoking weed before I went in. Then I'd just sit there waiting for the days to be over. I'd look out past the barbed wire fence and imagine a different life waiting for me on the other side. Something better than this. Something special. I never made it to the main unit. I think word may have gotten around to some of the higher-ups that I knew people over there. My supervisors weren't interested in transferring me over to the main campus, and once I realized that wasn't happening, I came to the conclusion that the job had run its course. So I quit. That was pretty much it.
Okay, so Rick Ross has always kind of dodged this question. I think he might have explained it maybe 1 or 2 times, but he explained it now. So I guess he's trying to say that he needed a job because he was young, he was staying with his mama. So he just got it as like a quick little job. He wasn't really taking it seriously, but he really wanted to go over to the main area and start like making money because he knew all the dope boys that were in the main area. So I guess he was gonna start like making money off, dudes letting them bring their girls in, taking them somewhere back, because that is a lucrative business out there. And I've heard this from other correction officers that they let the inmates give them money to be able to get, stuff in there, illegal stuff in there, be able to do, hey, I got a little spot. Can you find me a little spot? Cause my wife coming or my girlfriend coming, so we can spend about 30 minutes and we can go unnoticed, so I can bang her out real quick. So he's trying to make it seem like he wasn't really a correction officer that was doing his job. He was just there as a means to use it as a lick to get on. You know what I'm saying? That's what